You know how true crime YouTubers are always saying you got to separate like the person from the crime?
Right.
But what happens when it's the creator themselves dealing with like loss and tragedy and it's like their personal life? That's kind of, I think, the situation that Stephanie Harlowe, from her true crime channel, she's dealing with right now, right?
Right.
And we have this article about the death of her estranged husband, Adam.
Yeah, this is a tough one.
It's got a lot of layers to it.
It does. It really does. And I think the fact that they were estranged adds just a whole other dimension to this.
Yeah.
Especially for the kids,
That's what gets me is the kids. The article mentioned they have children. And I'm like, wow, that's got to be.
Yeah.
It's hard enough losing a parent, but when there's estrangement involved,
I
can't imagine the mix of emotions they must be
going through. It's a very different kind of grief, I think. It's not just sadness.
Yeah.
It's often coupled with a lot of unanswered questions.
Yeah.
Maybe even regrets. Like, could I have done more?
Yeah. Did they do enough to reach out?
Exactly. Could things have been different? And these are heavy things for anyone to grapple with, let alone, children who are grieving the loss of a parent.
And it's not like she's grieving privately either.
Right.
Like her entire life is online.
Of course.
And people have opinions.
Yeah.
The article mentioned this kind of like tension between the outpouring of support from like her YouTube followers. And then you have like the more, I guess, critical takes on Reddit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Reddit's going to Reddit.
Yeah, exactly.
But it really speaks to that, I think that tightrope that a lot of content creators walk today, right?
Yeah.
Where on the one hand, their audience feels like they know them.
Mm-hmm.
So there's this expectation to be vulnerable and authentic, especially in a genre like true crime, where she's built a whole career on exploring these really, really raw human experiences.
Exactly. And on the other hand, like you said, this is someone's personal tragedy.
Right. It is.
And where do we as viewers, as fans, draw the line between respecting her privacy?
Yeah. Where's that?
And wanting to engage with her content that inherently does touch on these difficult topics?
That's the $1 million question, right? And it's a conversation that I think we're having more and more.
Yeah, I think so too.
As content creation becomes so intertwined with people's personal lives, and particularly within genres like this, right? Like true crime, where you see the human cost of this kind of exposure playing out in real time.
Absolutely. And it brings up another point, too, about Stephanie's situation. I know you've got a lot of thoughts on this.
Yeah.
The ethics of true crime itself.
Mm-hmm.
How do creators, especially ones like Stephanie, who are now directly touched by tragedy, tell these stories responsibly? Like, where's the line between respectful storytelling and what some might see as exploiting real-life events for views?
It's a fine line, that's for sure. And I think for me, what I thought was really interesting, and I think speaks volumes, is that Stephanie actually included some addiction support resources.
I've noticed that too.
In her announcement, which I thought was really telling.
Yeah.
Because it's almost like she's acknowledging the weight of this content she's putting out there.
Yeah.
And that it has a very real potential to trigger viewers.
Yeah.
To be like, hey, but also, here's a lifeline if you need it.
It would have been very easy to just make the announcement about Adam and be like, this is what happened.
Exactly.
I'm taking some time. But to include that, it's like she's showing a sense of responsibility that I'm sure resonates with a lot of her viewers who might be dealing with similar situations.
For sure. And that, I think, is at the heart of this entire conversation.
Yeah.
Is that, behind the screen, behind these very carefully curated videos.
The persona.
And online personas, these are real people. With real families.
With real struggles.
Real struggles and real grief.
And in Stephanie's case, now that grief is intertwined with the very public nature of her work.
It is.
And the expectations of her audience, and even the ethics of the true crime genre itself.
Absolutely. It's a lot to unpack, and I can't even imagine how overwhelming it must be.
Oh, for sure.
For her to be navigating all of this while also grieving and supporting her children through their own loss.
Yeah, absolutely. And we haven't even talked about, Adam's struggles with addiction, which the article mentioned briefly.
Right.
And, we talk about addiction impacting families, but how does that estrangement, that specific kind of distance, potentially complicate the grieving process for her and her kids?
That's such a good question.
Yeah.
And I think one that's often overlooked. Because with addiction, there's this constant push and pull, this cycle of hope and disappointment.
Oh, yeah. Is heartbreaking.
That really, can fracture.
Yeah, it can really fracture relationships.
And so it's not a clean break like some estrangements might be. It's messy, it's complicated.
Right.
And it often leaves a lot of, unspoken
things.
Feelings on both sides.
So are you saying that when someone dies after a period of estrangement caused by addiction, those unresolved feelings can almost like overshadow the grief itself?
It's not that it overshadows the grief, but it just adds another layer of complexity on top of it.
Okay.
So imagine trying to mourn the loss of someone.
Right.
While also grappling with the resentment.
The anger,
maybe even the guilt.
Yeah.
That can often linger from their addiction.
Yeah, it's like carrying an extra weight on your shoulders as you're trying to process everything.
It's a heavy weight.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
And that really makes you think about how the kids are processing this too. Because they're not just dealing with the death of their father.
Right.
We're also dealing with
the legacy of it all.
The legacy of his addiction and the impact it had on their relationship with him, on their lives.
Yeah.
And Stephanie, as a mother, she's not only going through her own grief, but she's also trying to help them through theirs.
Exactly. And, the article even hints at the challenge of, single parenting after a loss like this.
Right, right.
Especially when you factor in like a pre-existing separation, it just adds to the emotional landscape.
Yeah.
And I think, experts suggest that really open communication is going to be key here.
Of course.
Allowing the children to, express whatever they're feeling without judgment.
Yeah.
But also, providing that stable and loving environment.
It's a lot. And, we haven't even touched on how this might impact Stephanie's content going forward, her relationship with her audience. But before we do that, let's take a quick break to hear from our sponsor.
It's interesting to think about how this very public loss could actually change the way that she approaches, true crime on her channel.
Yeah.
Because she's always been compassionate, right?
Right.
But this feels different.
For sure, yeah.
This is personal now.
Yeah, it's like she's been exploring these dark stories from a distance, and now all of a sudden she's like living one.
Right, exactly.
It makes you wonder if she's going to feel a stronger pull towards, I don't know, certain types of cases, maybe ones dealing with addiction.
Yeah.
Or family estrangement.
It's possible.
Yeah.
Because trauma has a way of
totally
reshaping our focus.
Yeah.
Drawing us to narratives
for sure
that resonate with our own experiences.
Yeah.
And let's be real, a lot of true crime already deals with addiction and broken families.
Right.
But for her to address it directly, to maybe even use her platform to talk about these issues more openly,
right,
that could be really powerful.
I think so too, for her viewers who might be going through it, but also for her, right?
Absolutely.
Like, I'm thinking about how therapeutic it can be to channel your own experiences into your work. Obviously, she takes breaks from YouTube. Everyone needs time to recharge.
Sure.
But imagine like the kind of raw, vulnerable content that she could create if she chooses to kind of process some of this on her channel,
Yeah, if she wants to.
If she wants to, right?
Because the article even mentioned she's getting a lot of pressure from fans.
Oh, really?
To address this head on.
Oh, wow.
To make it part of her content.
Which is a whole other can of worms.
Right. Who are we to say?
It's a whole other conversation, yeah.
As viewers, we develop these parasocial relationships, especially with creators like her, who are so open and authentic.
Yeah.
It's easy to forget
that
they're not our friends.
They're not our friends.
And it's not our place to dictate.
Right, exactly.
How they process their grief.
Right, yeah. And it's like that fine line between expressing concern and basically demanding that someone performs their trauma for us to consume, which is weird.
Exactly.
That's strange.
And I think it gets even trickier when you consider the true crime community specifically.
Yeah.
Because there's already a tendency to, dissect these cases.
Oh, 100%.
Analyze every detail.
Yeah.
And now her personal life is under that same microscope.
That's true.
It's almost like that worst case scenario of what we were talking about earlier.
Blurring those lines.
Blurring the lines between public persona and private grief.
Right.
And, it makes you wonder, even if she does choose to share more.
Yeah, how much of it will be...
How much of it will be genuine?
Yeah.
And how much of it will be influenced by this pressure she's feeling?
Yeah, by what people want.
By her audience, exactly.
And that's the thing, there's really no way to know.
There isn't, and unfortunately there's no easy answer.
No.
It's a total tightrope walk for any content creator.
Sure.
But especially, I think
so too, yeah.
For someone like her who's built her entire platform on this idea of, vulnerability and authenticity.
Being real.
Being real, exactly.
It makes you think about our responsibility as viewers too, right?
100%, yeah.
Like, we can't control what creators share.
Right.
But we can control how we receive it, how much pressure we put on them.
Absolutely.
To reveal things that maybe they're not ready to or shouldn't.
To perform for us, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And honestly, it's a conversation that I think extends far beyond.
Oh, for sure.
To Stephanie and the true crime community.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is relevant to, like, anyone
100%
who consumes content online these days.
It's the human experience now.
It is. It is. And we just have to remember that these are real people.
Behind the profile.
Behind these profiles with real lives being lived off camera.
Yes.
And those lives deserve respect.
They do. And sometimes.
Big time.
That respect means giving them the space.
Yes.
And the grace.
To heal.
To navigate their own grief and healing.
Yeah.
Without feeling like they have to perform it for us.
100%. I love that.
Yeah.
But, even with all this talk about, like, responsibility and boundaries,
right,
there's still that part of me, and I'm sure a lot of people listening feel this way too.
Yeah.
That's curious to see how this experience might shape her work going forward.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
Like, maybe it'll be a subtle shift in tone, or maybe she'll tackle certain topics with, like, a newfound rawness.
Yeah.
And vulnerability.
More empathy, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. It's hard to say.
Yeah.
But I have a feeling that she'll find a way to channel this experience into something powerful and meaningful.
I think so, too.
Yeah.
I mean, she always struck me as someone who is able to find meaning.
Right.
In the darkest places.
Totally.
And I have a feeling this is going to be no different.
Yeah, I agree.
But, only time will tell how this actually unfolds.
Right, yeah.
In the meantime, all we can really do is just kind of wait and watch.
Yeah, and be mindful.
And try to be mindful
of that pressure.
Of the pressure.
Yeah, of what we're putting out there.
Yeah, of what we expect.
And our expectations.
Exactly.
For sure. It's interesting how this whole thing with Stephanie has, like, gotten us thinking about the bigger picture of content creation, especially in true crime.
Mm-hmm.
It's always been about exploring, like, the dark side of humanity and everything. But now we're seeing the human cost of that exploration.
And cost play out,
Absolutely. And it just, like, brings up all these questions about responsibility and boundaries and
totally.
The ethics of profiting.
Yeah, for sure.
Off of other people's tragedies, even when you have, the best intentions.
Right.
Like, we're so used to seeing these creators as being, like, strong and unflappable and, untouchable.
Untouchable, right?
Yeah.
But at the end of the day...
Yeah, they're human.
They're human.
They are. And I think Stephanie stepping back, even if it's temporary, from her channel, it really speaks volumes, I think, about her commitment to her own well-being and that of her children, too.
For sure.
It's a good reminder that, behind every viral video, behind every, like, captivating case analysis and all that, there's a real person.
A real person.
Navigating real life.
Absolutely. With all of its complexities, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it's a side that I think we forget.
A lot,
as viewers, Yeah. We get so caught up in the stories and the drama and the personalities that we forget that these are real humans.
An actual human being.
Behind the screen.
Behind these screens,
Dealing with loss, grief.
Real consequences.
The real consequences of these crimes.
That's the stuff they're talking about,
It's heavy.
Yeah, it makes you wonder, like, how sustainable?
Yeah, like, is
it even possible?
Can you do this long term?
Long term, can you keep exploring these dark themes, these, heart-wrenching stories?
Right.
Without it, like, taking a toll?
Yeah, without it impacting you.
On your own mental and emotional well-being. It's a question, honestly, that I think more and more creators
for sure
are having to grapple with.
I think so, too.
This constant exposure to tragedy.
Right.
The pressure to, keep your audience engaged.
Right, the algorithm.
The algorithm, exactly. The blurring of those lines between their public and private lives.
Yeah, and that's a lot.
It's a lot to carry.
It is.
And, I think as we see with Stephanie, sometimes life just throws these curveballs,
that
force you to really reevaluate.
Yeah, what's important.
What's important, your priorities.
And honestly, I think that's like the biggest takeaway from all of this.
Yeah.
Is that even in this online world where it feels like everything is, curated and controlled.
Right.
Life has a way of interrupting our narratives and, challenging our perspectives.
Losing us to confront those messy realities.
And forcing us to confront those messy realities of, just being human.
Being human, yeah.
Beautifully said.
And sometimes those interruptions, as difficult as they might be in the moment.
Right.
Are really what end up leading us to, a deeper understanding of ourselves and
of ourselves, the world around us.
Yeah. The world around us, exactly.
Well, we've reached the end of our deep dive on Stephanie Harlowe's story.
Yeah.
And, the bigger conversations that it sparks.
Yeah,
about content creation, grief, the ethics of true crime.
There's so much to unpack there.
It's a lot to process.
It is.
And I have a feeling we're going to be revisiting these themes.
Absolutely.
Again and again as the lines between our online and offline lives continue to just get blurrier and blurrier.
As they inevitably will, right?
They inevitably will, yeah. But until next time, thanks for listening and be sure to,
keep the conversation going.
Yeah, keep the conversation going, exactly.
What are your thoughts? How do you think this is going to shape her work moving forward?
Right. What's your take on all this?
What's your take? Let us know.
Yeah, let us know because, like we were saying before, these are big, complicated issues with no easy answers.
No easy answers, but
they're worth thinking about.
They're worth continuing to explore.
As we, try to figure out how to exist.
Navigate
this digital world.
Yeah. This digital landscape.
Exactly. So, until next time.
Stay curious.
Stay curious.
Keep asking those tough questions.
And remember to show each other a little grace, We're all just figuring this out as we go.
We are all just figuring it out, 100%.